This is a story. Those of you who have followed me for a while have heard this, but new followers have not. So I have 5 children, but I had 4 babies in 6 years. Okay. And I was a teacher at the time. And so I was, on maternity leave, having a baby all the time, but I had to go back to work so quickly. And we needed 2 incomes to make, ends meet. And I remember after I had our 4th baby, Kelsey, I was so determined that I was not going to go back to work. Okay. I'm very old school, and I believe that mothers should be home raising their children, okay? But we needed the money. Like, even with my income, we were just making ends meet, okay? So anyways, I have Kelsey, and I have this set date to go back to teaching. And I had such a big faith in God, okay? And I'm like, I'm not gonna have to go back to work. I kept telling Terry, I'm not going back to work. I'm staying home with Kelsey, because now I have, basically 3 toddlers and a baby, and I had my mind made up. And he's like, oh, that's cute. You're going back to work. You can retire at age 55. And I knew with every fiber in me, I just could not pass over another baby. So this is what I tell my kids too. You can pray all you want. You can say the words. You can look up, miraculous prayers. But the number 1 key to prayer, no matter what religion you are, no matter, your beliefs, it is your faith, knowing that God will deliver, okay? So I had a big faith. Like, I was so certain, okay? And so I was like walking around. I was telling my coworker, while I'm on my maternity leave, like, I am joyful, because I was like, God's not sending me back to work, okay? I was telling my coworkers, oh, I'm not coming back, even though I had a return date. Like, everywhere we were, I was telling like both of our families and my friends, oh yeah, I'm not going back to work. And like, Terry's like, she's losing her mind. Like, she's going back. She's just, she's hormonal. She's emotional. She's going back to work. And, oh, Tony, that's so sweet. So I was like, God's going to do this in a way that I have no idea. And that's just how he works. And I'm like, he's going to come through with a book deal for me, or we're going to win the lottery, or my business is going to take off, or like, I'm like, oh, it's so exciting. I don't know how God is going to do this, but I literally had the craziest faith, full faith God's going to do this. So we get to the Saturday before I'm supposed to go back to work. On that Monday, okay? It's now Saturday. Nothing happened. God didn't come through. There was no book deal. At this point, I had an agent at the time who just couldn't get me a book deal. My business didn't take off, didn't win the lottery, no money out of the blue came through. So I remember even that Friday night, I was like, God's coming through. Like, I'm going to be home. I'm not going back to work Monday. And then Saturday, something kicked in where I'm like, God didn't come through. And I remember being in my oldest son's room. I didn't have my youngest son yet, of course. No one else was in there. It was just me. And I remember throwing a fit like a 3-year-old would do. I was physically throwing myself. I was crying. I was thrashing. I was screaming literally out to God. I was so angry. I'm like, how could you not come through for me? How embarrassing. Like, I've told all these people that you're coming through for me and that I'm going to be home, because why wouldn't you want me home with my baby? And you've let me down? Like, I literally, like, I'm screaming out loud having a conversation with God. Because I was so certain he was going to bring me home, or let me stay home. And I was just beside myself, and I felt like I immediately almost slipped into a depression, which I had experienced passing over my other babies. And I was so upset with God. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This does not make sense. I was faithful. I prayed diligently, but most importantly, I believed to a T that God was going to deliver. So I go back to work Monday, and it's terrible, and I'm crying. And Tuesday, I have to go back again, and it's terrible, and I'm crying. And that night, I came home from work, and I was, again, before I became like a writer, I was a blogger. And before The Real Deal of Parenting became 639,000 followers, you know, nothing had taken off, nothing. But I had some blogs that, you know, I would be pushed. Believe it or not, I wrote for some liberal sites. I've always been conservative, but anyways, so I had wrote for Huffington Post. I know, right? Like Huffington Post. I'm saying it like that, meaning like liberal. But I had threw this blog together as I'm angry, I'm disappointed in God, I'm so sad. I didn't even like really check it over. I emailed it over to an editor, and I almost was like, why did I even send that? Like, I didn't even check it over, and I probably shouldn't have wrote that. That's probably like the worst thing I've ever written. So I sent it over. The next morning, I woke up, and that blog started to go viral. And when I mean viral, I mean when I was pushing the mouse to refresh, it was like 10,000 more shares. And then I'd wait a few seconds and I'd hit refresh, like 10,000 more shares. And I'm like, what is happening? So anyways, this was a blog that a lot of you started following me from. It was a working mother's plea to the president. And this actually got me invited to the White House. And I met with the Secretary of Labor, Tom Perez. But at any rate, okay. So this piece goes viral. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But why it went viral, all these mothers from around the world who resonated with my pain, who felt the like overwhelming feeling of passing their babies over, going back to work, missing their children through the day, struggling to make ends meet. And had God not allowed me to be in that position, to go back to work, to feel that pain, I never would have wrote that blog. And it never would have taken off, and I wouldn't be connected to so many people. That piece took off my writing. I had gotten, shortly after, a different agent, and a top 3 publishing company in the world signed me a book deal. My business took off, and it was less than a month of being back to teaching, and I was able to leave and retire and come home with Kelsey and my other kids. And I have chills because, and everybody knows this, it's not our timing. It's always God's timing. And again, we're such a selfish people. We want now. We want immediate gratification. We're like, we know best, God. We're just the most selfish people. I am the most impatient person I've ever met in my life. And I'm like OCD type A. I like things color coordinated. It's like, okay, God, I know exactly when this next thing I needs to come. It needs to come on this day by 11 a.m. And literally, it's just nuts. But yet I believed God would do it, even though it was impossible. My situation was impossible, that I would not be able to leave teaching. Financially, physically, Terry saying, nope, you're not allowed to come home. You're going to be there till you're 55. Have to pay the bills. And yet I knew in my heart that I wanted and needed to be home. And so it's crazy that God had to allow me to suffer a little bit, to stretch me a little bit, to still see if I was going to trust him. And he had to do it his way, and he had to do it in his timing. And no, it wasn't even, my goodness, when I think back, it was like, I only had to go not even a month back to work. And then he forever brought me home. And so many other things wouldn't have happened for me had I not gone back, and had I not been in that position and wrote that blog. And to this day, that's like the biggest piece that I've ever written. And I was named Huffington Post, like not just HuffPost Parents, like Huffington Post in general, a top 10 blog for 2 years in a row. And again, so many mothers around the world just resonated. But at any rate, my point is, the key to everything is having faith that God will deliver what you're asking for. And so when I was telling my son this story, he's like, okay, so anything I pray for, and if I have faith, God's going to give it to me. So I had talked to him about, if you pray for like some malicious thing to happen to somebody, like, of course not. But I also gave him the example, and I think this is important for everybody, that I said, let's say you were older, Cade, and you're praying for a job, and it looks like a great opportunity, and you have so much faith, God's going to get me this job. And let's say you make it to the top 2, and you're in your interview, and you find out you didn't get the job, and you've been praying for it and had such a big faith. God's going to give you that. And you don't end up with a job. You're going to be like, wait a minute, Mom, you told me if I have faith in God and I pray and I'm consistent and I'm living a good life, like he's going to answer my prayer. But I said, you see, God sees down the road what we don't. He knows what we don't. So I said, that job may have put you in a bad position where you were going to sin terribly down the road at some point, or that job was going to let you go in 3 months if you would have gotten it. And God has a better job, a better opportunity. He wants you somewhere else. So I was trying to explain that it's not, of course, God is the master of the universe and can do anything with the snap of a finger. But I had said, he can, it's like waving a wand and he can do whatever he wants, but it's always in our best interest. And I said, yes, if it's in accordance with his will, he's going to basically grant anything. But what's tricky is it's just not in the way we think. And guys, this story is nothing. Well, no, it's great. It's great. But, and it gives me chills when I think about it, because when I say it's all God, it's all God. But when you hear my daughter's story, it's chilling. It's chilling. And Kendall and I, we're probably going to do a video next week to talk about what happened when we did this 9-day novena. And I am saying goosebumps crazy, where I'm still telling people, I'm like, this blows my mind, yet it doesn't blow my mind at all because it's God. And just wait. It's good. So I feel like so many people are frustrated right now, and I feel like so many people feel hopeless, and people feel like God's not hearing their prayer. And I just want to remind you, because we all know that it's God's timing, not ours. I think we all know that. Even though we don't like it, we don't have to like it, but that's just how it is. But I think people miss the biggest component to prayer and God delivering. It's not because we deserve it. Certainly not. None of us deserve it. None of us deserve anything. It is our faith tied to God, and faith in that he's going to deliver. He's going to answer that prayer in the best way possible. Even if it's saying, no, I have something better, or yes, but you're just gonna have to wait a little bit longer. It just never ceases to amaze me. So I just had to share that with y'all, because when I was telling my son earlier, again, I've told that story so many times, but I have not told it for the longest time. And it just felt so good to share it again. And then this recent story where a huge intention for my oldest daughter that we prayed about, it's like God is a God of miracles. And I think today we have to lean on that more than any other time in history, because it's crazy. But so anyways, those of you who just hopped on, you'll have to re-listen to hear the full story. But be like me, be crazy, be so big and bold, and literally walk around telling people as if it's already happened. Yep, God's come through. God's gonna make it happen. I'm serious, because it's like, I was thinking of this the other day. You know, I was born into poverty, and, you know, my parents, they were never married. They weren't together. Neither of them had really anything. And I was always like, why couldn't God give me rich parents? Why couldn't God, you know, have made my life easier? Why, you know, like sometimes, and not just for the sake of money, but I'm thinking like making life easier, you know? And then it wasn't till recently I had hit this point where I'm like, I have the richest father in the universe. I have the strongest, most powerful father in the universe. And I have to stop relying on earthly people, you know, ideas, plans, and just simply rely on God and do what he wants me to be doing, and think that he's going to take care of it. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, and it's not going to be in the way we want or in our perfect timing, because again, I am impatient, but he really does. And when you trust the process and you trust him, it's absolutely awesome. So anyways, stay tuned for next week when Kendall and I talk about what happened with her. Wild. All right, I hope y'all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I can't believe it's almost December. Next week's my last week of being 39. I'm turning the big 40 at the beginning of December. I can't believe it. That's like kind of crazy. I don't know. I just want it to like be here and be over with. Just so, you know, because I'm constantly thinking about it. So it's like, it just needs to be here and be over with. But I hope everybody's doing good, and I'll talk to y'all soon.